Yes, I am.
Good. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today at the HMSC Research Seminar. My name is Cinnamon Moffett, and I'm the Research Program Manager at Oregon State University's Hatfield Marine Science Center, located in Newport, Oregon. And I will be your host for today. Couple of logistics before we get started. Many of you have been on these with me before, but we do have your mics, cameras, and screen shares disabled for this particular event. We do hope that you ask your questions using the chat function, which you can find at the bottom or the top of your screen. Please put in any questions you have for today's speaker at any time, but we'll work through them at the end. Also wanted to let folks know that we are recording today's event. So if you miss something or you want to share it with others, you'll be welcome to do that. And I will put in, I just realized I don't have it at the moment, but I will put in the link for where you can get that here in just a little bit. So watch for the chat and I'll get that up once we get started. Wanted to let folks know that there will be no seminar, HMSC seminar next week due to our spring break, but I'm hoping that you'll come back and join us on March 31st when Jeff Beeson from Simmers and PMEL, which is a NOAA group, will be speaking to us about the EV Nautilus expedition NA128. So that'll be a fun one. So come back and join us in 2 weeks and enjoy a week off for spring break. Wanted to also just let folks know I'm still looking for a seminar speaker on May 28th. So if you or anybody you know would like to join us and be a part of the HMSC seminars, please let me know and we'll work on getting them on the schedule. If you need any information about our events, please go to the HMSC homepage, scroll to the bottom, and you'll get a calendar of events there. You can click on that and get all the login information that you might need. But for today, we are so excited. We have Mauricio Cantor is a relatively new staff member with us here at Hatfield, and he invited today's speaker, hoping that the speaker would be able to be here on site in person, but that didn't quite work. Then Mauricio had to go out in the field and is out on a research cruise and is unable to join us. But so I get the pleasure of introducing today's speaker. And so Guilherme is a postdoctoral research fellow with the Oceanographic Institute of the University of São Paulo. And a visiting researcher with Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. He has his bachelor's in biology, master's and PhD in ecology from the University of Pig Campus in Brazil. Most of his research explores ecology and conservation of coastal marine ecosystems, focusing primarily on structure of marine communities, the reproduction and population dynamics of marine species. We are very excited to have you here. And I just have to warn everybody, Guilherme is suffering from a little bit of a cold, and he still is able to be here with us. So Guilherme, the floor is yours. We're so excited that you're here through all of our troubles. So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Cinnamon. Yeah, first, I would like to thank you, Cinnamon, and for the opportunity to present my work here, to share a bit what I have done in the past years. And also Mauricio, which is not here, but he invited me and it was a great opportunity here. So thank you both for this. And I also would like to apologize at first hand because, yeah, I got a bad flu and a bit of coughing and my voice is not the best. And I believe I have a strong accent, so maybe would be not the best combination, but please feel free to ask me anything that you do not understand. Okay. Sorry. So, okay, today, and good afternoon or good night. I'm here in Maryland. It's good night here. Good afternoon at Oregon. So today I'm gonna talk a bit of the hidden biodiversity of beach ecosystem, sampling methods, spatial patterns, and the influence of the environment and human activities. So this talk I structured into 5 topics. The first 3, I'm gonna be very brief about what is sand beach, the definitions, the importance of sand beaches, like which ecosystem services they provide, and what is the biodiversity they harbor. Some shortcomings on the studies on sandy beaches that have been done so far. And then I'm gonna go a bit further into the project that my colleagues and I at University of São Paulo have been developing the past 4 or 5 years, yeah, which I believe has brought some very interesting results. And just to wrap up the presentations, a few take-home messages. Okay, so the first topic is, what is a sand beach? What is the definition of a sand beach? Just to put us into the context of this talk. So the overall definitions of sand beaches they are simply loose deposits of sands, including possibly some gravel or shells, that cover the shoreline in many places. Okay, that's a more geological definitions of sand beaches. And as they are located on the shoreline, they link the marine and terrestrial environments. They usually extend from the near shore to the sand dunes or vegetation. So the sand beaches goes from the near shore to the sand dunes and vegetation. And this is a common mistake, because usually people, like say people, the regular people that go to my parents to the beach, they usually think, okay, the beach stops there when the water comes, but that's not the sand beach, that's the intertidal zone only. Beach goes way beyond that. Beaches go further into the sea, sometimes kilometers into the sea. It actually starts or it ends, depends what your perspective, when the waves start moving the sediment on the bottom. So the water start moving the sediment on the bottom, that's the beginning or the end of the sandy beaches, and go until the water stops acting on the sediment. So it goes usually from where the waves start moving the sediment up to the upper zone, the dunes or the vegetation, where there's not a big influence of the water. So the sand beach comprise all that space on the coast, right? And they make up about 30% of the world's ice-free coastlines. And that's a bit conservative. Some studies say more than half of the ice-free coastlines. But this is the last study that made this projection, so I'm gonna keep with the study for Liendek, 2018. And this is how sand beaches are spread over the world. So you can see there on the white, or the more the dark brown is where it's rock shores, and the light brown is sand beach. So you can see, like in Africa, for example, 6-7% of the coast of Africa are sand beaches. Australia is about 1/3. South America, it's almost 1/3 of us. North America, it's about 1/3, and US even more. Like even Oregon, I think about 2/3 of Oregon state, it's sand beaches. So it's very widespread and very present in our lives, as we're gonna see. And just out of curiosity, I went to the internet and had a look. Okay, let's see how does Oregon beach looks like. And it happens that you have very, very nice beaches there, like Cannon Beach, it's beautiful. Hobbit Beach, seems a well-preserved beach, and the name is like, oh yeah, is that something related to Lord of the Rings or Tolkien? And it happens it does, because it's like from the trail to get into the beach, it seems a bit like the Hobbit book. And also South Jetty Beach. So just a few examples of Oregon beaches that you have there. Pretty amazing, and some very nice and some very well preserved beaches. And when we look at pictures like that, the first thing that we see and we relate to, and especially think, okay, let's go to a sand beach, is usually related to leisure and recreation. That comes to our mind. Okay, like we usually see ourselves relaxing by the sea, sunbathing and have a drink or a coconut water, or playing with our friends, or even celebrating and partying. This is New Year's Eve in Copacabana, which I had the opportunity to be there a couple of times. It's amazing. I totally recommend. It's one of the best shows in the world, like 20 minutes of fireworks, but please be careful with pickpockets, because that happens a lot. So sand beaches, we usually think that party and celebrations and relaxing and leisure, and they are indeed important sites for recreation and leisure. But actually, they are much more than that. And that's what I want to tell you about. What is the importance of sand beaches, what the ecosystem services they provide, and the biodiversity they host, right? So I got just a bit of the work from the Phil et al. 2019. All the references are provided at the end of the presentation. So they stayed here. It's not all, but most of the ecosystem services provided by sand beach. So sediment storage and transport, wave dissipation, dynamic response to sea level rise. So sand beaches are very, very important in coastal protection. Yeah, and we are seeing that happening, like the coastal erosion and lots of properties being washed away. Breakdown of organic matters, water filtration, nutrient recycling, water storage, nursery areas for fish, that's very important, nesting sites for turtles and shorebirds, and so on. Bait and food, like we collect a lot of food on sand beaches, and we do fish, and we collect some vertebrates that we use for our own consumption. So sand beaches are not just bio sands, they provide a lot of ecosystem service to us. And they also harbor a very specific and important biodiversity. Like this work from Harris 2014, they estimated that the macrofauna and this macrofauna are the organisms larger than half millimeter that usually lives on the sand, like in the benthos, attached or close relation to the sand. Yeah. So the rate, sorry, the rate of endemism they estimate that it's higher than those for coral reefs. Come on, coral reefs, huh? And even the mountain fibers. And they guess that is even like a conservative estimate, because they are mainly focused on male macrofauna. If they include other groups such as male fauna, for example, that would be even higher than endemism rate. So yes, sand beaches, they provide a lot of ecosystem services, and they harbor a very important and specific biodiversity. For example, the piping plover, that's such a beautiful bird that you might have seen in the short movie, the short film that won the Academy Award, the Oscar, in 2017. That's a pretty nice short movie. And they portray the pipe plover there. And also sand beaches are important for turtles. They are nesting grounds for turtles. But not only for those vertebrates, because those are very charismatic species, and it's good to claim attention to sand beaches. Say, hey, let's protect sand beaches, otherwise the turtles are not going to reproduce. The pipers are not going to reproduce. Yeah. But the most of biodiversity of sand beaches are invertebrates, which lives in the sediment, on the top of the sediment, especially benthic vertebrates. For example, annelids, like Scololepis squamata, which is spionid, Armandia, which is ophalid, Glycindemultids, agoniadid, and lots of gastropods, Astula cinerea, Olivella minuta, Bulla striata, which is a carnivore gastropod, which is very common in many places. South Africa, it's the abundance of Bulla striata, it's crazy. I don't know Bulla striata specifically, but Bulla, the genera, it's crazy high there. Lots of bivalves, Donax, which is the surf clam, which is present all over the coast of America. Donax salianus is a common one in Brazil, but you have a lot of Donax here in US coast. Strigila carnaria, which the names, it's already saying carnaria, it's a carnivore. Tivella mactroids, Corbula cinerea, lots of crustaceans. The Ossipoda quadrata here on the right bottom is the ghost crab, which is a common species used at anthropic impacts as indicator of anthropic impacts. The blue crab, Calinex XP, here in Maryland, it seems like a blue crab or a mud crab. It's the the state animal. Like everywhere I go, I see some blue crabs shirts or mugs, that. And other crustaceans as amphipods, isopods, and other groups as well, like sipunculids, nemertians, echinoderms, like sand dollars, sea stars, echiuras, some chordates as well. And even more, beside the macrofauna, we have the meiofauna. That's the organism that's smaller than 0.5 millimeters. And their abundance, as you can see, that they are much smaller. Their abundance are crazily high. And they have thousands, hundreds of thousands in a square meter and sand beaches. The problem that most of this biodiversity is hidden inside the sediments. That's why we don't see. When we go to the beach, like people who doesn't have the knowledge, which is most of the people, they only think, okay, some beaches are indeed pile of sands, but no, as I'm showing, they harbor a lot of biodiversity. But the thing is that this biodiversity is hidden inside the sediments, as we can see here in this figure. Like the vast majority, even the Ossipoda quadrata, the ghost crab, which is the number one, okay, you can frequently see them running on top of the sediment, but they live inside burrows. Most of the time they are inside their burrows there. We are not seeing. So they are inside the sediments, or they are underwater. Like you can see here, it's a movie for one of our cameras. I'm gonna talk about it later. You see that's lots of fish on the sand beaches. See as much. And they're present there on the waves. We don't see it. Sorry. And not even small fish. We have some big ones as well. This is about 71 meter deep. São Paulo, Southeast Brazil. I needed to put this movie because it's a huge hit every time I play it. And my colleagues as well. So just a slow motion to see. Some sharks as well. Yeah, look, some small fish, big fish. So I hope you believe me that sand beaches harbor a lot of biodiversity and they are not just pile of sands, right? But even though they are very important, they provide a lot of ecosystem services and they host a lot of biodiversity, the ecological investigations of sand beaches, they are missing a lot. And why is that? Some shortcomings about sand beach studies. For example, Nell and colleagues, they performed a revision about sand beach studies in 2014, and they found that beach science was very underrepresented in the literature. One reason for that is because beaches, they were only recognized as ecosystems in the 80s. So before all that, yes, beaches were just only pile of sands. In the 80s that they studied, the ecological investigations of sand beaches started. And if you like get this example in comparison, for example, they have like less than 3,000 in 2014, yeah? Less than 3,000 studies on sandy beaches. There was more than 36,000 estuaries, more than 20,000 in corals. So yes, indeed, it seems that sand beach studies, the ecological investigations studies, the number, it's not that high. Yeah, another problem is that, okay, I told you at the beginning that sand beaches are not just only the intertidal zone. Sand beaches goes well beyond. They extend into the sea, yeah, until the area where the waves start moving the sediment. But the vast majority of studies on sand beaches, they happen only in the intertidal zone. The intertidal zone and the upper shore, like dunes, that's a bit few studies as well. Like the number of studies investigated the submerged zones of sand beaches are very low. And it's easy to understand why. Like when you look at a picture like that, you can see like this is us, like I am the one in black, my colleague is a bit further, And that is us trying, like, doing our sampling that we're gonna talk a bit later, sampling sandy beaches. Like, performing research in that zone is literally like trying to sample inside a washing machine. The waves and the currents, it's the hydrodynamic that it's very intense. So that's the main reason why most of studies like only the intertidal and the upper zone. Like, I got a movie here that we trying to, like, the first thing, we are always in a group. It's impossible to do the work alone. Like, it's always, okay, you hold me, two holding the sampler, and two other ones holding each other, another two to hold the bags to take the sample back to the sand. And it's like that. Like, and this is not a heavy sea. This is pretty, like, standard. Like, the waves are just, they were dissipating. And that beach we could perform something like perfectly, no worries at all. But even though it is still a hard one. Oh, sorry. And the same for the ecology of surffish. For example, Oates and colleagues, they performed a revision in 2018 on all the studies in the world that have investigated surffish, and they only found 152 studies. If you compare to other groups in other environments, that's a very low. Like, the whole world, only 150 studies. And I'm sure, pretty confident, that if you think about the macrofauna, the benthos that inhabits the submerged zones of some beach, the number is going to be lower than that. So from that, sandy beach ecosystem, they do not have enough studies to have a clear representation and provide information for management and conservation plans. And research, has a limited scope and restricted to the upper zones. Yeah. Adding to that, sand beaches are highly used by human populations. Just last year, a work from the field and colleagues, I'm going to show later, they estimated that more than 1 billion people use sand beaches every year. And it's not hard to believe that, because if you look at pictures like this is Ipanema Beach, the girl from Ipanema. This is Brazil, 2014. This is China, 2016. South Africa, 2014. Australia, Bondi Beach, 2012. UK, during the pandemic, this is 2020, COVID pandemic, and look at the beaches, everyone's on the beach. Even Oregon, I found there was a sandcastle contest in the Canal Beach, that very beautiful beach that I showed at the beginning. And even Oregon Beach, and it seems that it was winter, yeah, because everyone is wearing such heavy clothes. Sorry. So, yeah, sand beaches are heavily used. And not only the influence, the impacts are not only from the human using the beach at that moment. Sand beaches are trapped in a coastal squeeze because they have the climate change effects from the ocean. So high intensity of storms and intensity and frequency of storms that are hitting the beaches more and more, which provokes a lot of erosion. And on the terrestrial side, we have urbanization, industrialization that brings all the impacts from the land. So we have impacts from the land and from the sea. And sandy beaches, remember, I said that in the littoral active, they form the core of the littoral active zone, and they are trapped between those two major sources of impacts. So if we add, there's not enough studies to fully understand sandy beach ecosystems. The research that we have done so far are limited and restricted to the upper zones. Sandy beaches are highly used by human populations, and they are under the influence of a coastal squeeze. The result, it's obvious, like sand beaches are at the brink, that they are the 2000, the second studies is the one of the field that I told you. They are at risk, like, and the last study, sandy coastlines under threat of erosion, they predict that if nothing changes, by the end of this century, half, sorry, half of the sand beaches of the world are going to disappear due to coastal erosion. Yeah, having that in mind, we started a research project focused on preserving sand beaches. So the name was Preserving Sand Beaches, Biodiversity, Goods and Services, and Impacts on a Neglected Ecosystem. Actually, this is my postdoc project, my previous postdoc that I did at University of São Paulo. So it has the support of USP, University of São Paulo, FAPESP, which is the São Paulo Research Foundation, and Fundação Grupo O Boticário. I really appreciate the support. Yeah. Okay, going a bit further in this project. What we have done and how we did it. So we were in Southeast Brazil, right? São Paulo state, which is the most populous state in Brazil. Like São Paulo city has more than 20 million people. And we sampled 90 beach sites all over the north coast of São Paulo, from São Sebastião to Ubatuba. Yeah. So it was 30 beaches. Each beach was divided into 3 sites, the 2 edges and the middle. Why we did that? To encompass the variation inside each beach. Because as you can see, some beaches are more exposed or not. So one side, it's more exposed to the wave action and the other one are not. So we wanted to get that intra-beach variation and also inter-beach variation. So we sampled 30 beaches and 90 sites in total. And those beaches encompassed a range of natural characteristics. So from very pristine beaches, for example, Fazenda, which is inside a natural park that you cannot go by car, you cannot build close to the beach, nothing. So it's a very well-preserved sand beach. And also we collect sand beach like Praia do Centro in Caraguatatuba, which is in the center of the largest city on the north coast of São Paulo. Yeah, so different types of beaches, different morphodynamics. So very reflective beaches, they want which very intense wave actions, and also very dissipative beaches. Like, for example, this one is a dissipative beach where the wave come dissipating its energy all over the coast. So the action of the waves are not very high. And in those 90 sites, we sampled both fishes and macrobenthos, right? Okay, so for the macrobenthos, the macrofauna, we, in each of those 90 sites, so 3 sites at each beach, we divided each site into 5 zones. From the upper shore, so was supralittoral, high intertidal, low intertidal, shallow subtidal, and surf zones, right? 5 zones trying to encompass the whole across shore gradient. And in each one of these zones of each site, we got 3 samples with a small core and 1 sample with a big core. Like the small core was 15 centimeter diameters and the big core was 50 centimeter quadrats. So 15 centimeters diameters and 50 centimeter quadrats. Just some pictures showing how we did it. So like A, it's my colleague collecting a sample in the intertidal. There, me and another colleague collecting sample in the shallow subtidal. And then we took all the samples, we put those samples in plastic bags and took all of them to the lab where we sieved into meshes of 1 and 0.5 millimeters to collect all the organisms, right? We did that for the macrofauna. In each of those 90 sites, we collected samples in the 5 zones. And for the fish, we also, in each of those 9 sites, actually it was not 9, it was 77, because some of them we couldn't do it because the waves were too strong. So but we did sample fish there using surf roofs that I'm gonna talk a bit later, and sea nets. And just to let you know, like the fishes were the main job of my colleague Yasmina Shaismaeli, is the main focus of her PhD. So Yasmina is responsible for most of the investigations with the fish. She's a very bright student, and which is getting very good results on fish biodiversity on sand beaches. Okay, so this is the 2 sampling methods that we use to investigate the fish biodiversity: CNET and surf roofs. Surf roofs are basically like roofs, baited, remoted underwater videos but it's adapted to a more active situation. So like in the surf zone. So very heavy weights and a GoPro and a bait there to attract the fish. And then buoyant, so we can localize the roofs after 1 hour, right? And what are the results? What have we found? First, I'm going to talk about the comparison of sampling methods, the comparison of CNET and surf roofs. Just an overall result. So we found 5,017 individuals of macrobenthos from 172 species, and almost 9,000 fishes from 64 species. So from this, okay, I hope you believe me, sand beaches are not just pile of sands, they do harbor a lot of biodiversity, right? And what about the comparison of the methods? So in the same sites, we deployed the surf roofs, we waited for 1 hour, and then we went there, removed the roofs, and passed the sea nets. So 2 sand roofs at each site and 2 sea nests at each site. What have we found? We found that the sea nest, it harbors more species and individuals as well than the surf roofs. Like you can see here, the number of species that we collected using the sea net was much higher than the number of species collected with the surf roofs. And this holds for the taxonomic diversity and also for the functional diversity. So sea nets in brown, the roofs are in blue, and we collect more species richness, more singular species, more functional richness using the sea nets, and also more functional dispersion. Yeah, but when we compare the community that each of the methods sampled, we found that each method sampled totally different communities. There was almost no overlap between those 2 methods. I can see roof, it's on the bottom side, and sea nets on the top, like there are almost no overlap. Even when we sample the same beach, like almost in the same time, they sample different communities. So one conclusion that we found was, okay, the application of both methods provide complementary results. And that's what's true also, like, as I said, for the functional diversity. For example, if you see like the sea nets collect more school-forming fish, while the roofs sampled more solitary fishes. Like the size, in regards to the size, the nets collected smaller individuals, while larger individuals were sampled better with roofs. And even in regards to the diet, carnivores were more present, as you see, remember that shark? Carnivores were more present in the videos than in the sea nets. So just to say like some overall conclusions, like sea nets, they sampled large biodiversity and they were less biased. Yeah, because that's a big discussion in regards to roofs, because as you need to put baited, remoted, baited, we need to put bait there. So that many critics say, okay, you are putting baits there, so that's you are changing the environment. You are obviously attracting carnivore fishes, and that's true. You know? And also another advantage of CNETs, they provide more accurate results. CNETs, you can measure every individual that you collect. You can weight every individual that you collect. That's not possible with BRUVs. You can do that, you can estimate, but it's not as precise. But on the other hand, the BRUVs, they collect more large and mobile organisms. It's easier to use BRUVs. You don't need to go into the water and be there like pulling all the CNET. Sometimes we actually did got like left by the not left the currents took us, and it was a bit scary. And importantly, the BRUVs are non-extractive. Most of the fish that we collected, like 6,000-7,000, it was from the CNETs, and we had to like we killed all of them, like to measure and to weight. Yeah, the one big advantage of BRUVs, and they are not extractive, so you can do this from them. For example, for monitoring studies, maybe BRUV might be a good idea. But then the overall conclusion of the studies that we found, okay, they provide complementary results. So if we want to have a comprehensive assessment of shallow surface and fish biodiversity, we would have to do a combination of sampling methods. Yeah, that's what we did. We used both the CNETs and the BRUVs, and by combining both methods, we had the best result. But coming soon, and spoiler, that's not from our group. That's a group here from the US, California. Probably is going to come in soon, a very nice study that they did this comparison, basically almost the same thing that we did. The comparison of biomonitoring methodologies for subzone fish communities, but they included eDNA as well. They used beach scenes, BRUV, and eDNA. So they did that to characterize the fish assemblies at 18 sand beaches in South California. And what have they found? They found that CNETs and BRUVs, their sample were overlapping, but as we did, they also found that they were sampling distinct fish communities. And the BRUV surveys more frequently detected larger species. Yeah, that's pretty much the same thing that we found. Yeah, while CNETs more frequently detected one of the most abundant species. Yeah, exactly the same what we found. But the most interesting thing that they have found is that eDNA was much more effective in sampling fish biodiversity. Like eDNA captured more than 80% of the biodiversity sampling by both BRUVs and CNETs, and even more, 59 additional species. So if we put in a Venn diagram, that's basically what it is. Like we have a very small part that was sampled only by BRUVs, a very small part was sampled only by CNETs, and eDNA capturing the large biodiversity. Yeah, so from that, it seems like we can have a match there. And as the BRUVs, eDNA is non-extractive as well. Of course, this technology is still starting. We have to build like eDNA banks. Yeah, lots of, it's still growing, but that might be a very promising approach for the future. It samples, the sampling efficiency is very high and is a non-extractive method. Okay. And what about the drivers of beach biodiversity? Yeah, so we talk about the methods used to sampling, especially the fish biodiversity, and what are the main drivers of beach biodiversity. So starting with the fishes, Remember, we sampled those 90 sites, and we sampled the biodiversity, but we also sampling the environmental features. We measure the wave break height, urbanization features, chlorophyll, the slope, the presence of river, and everything we could, sediment size. And we found that for fishes, the most important environmental features was wave break height, urbanization, and chlorophyll. As you can see here, wave height is in blue, urbanization orange, and chlorophyll in green. Like for species richness is the first row. They explain most of the variation. For abundance of fishes, also more than half. The presence of singular species, same. So they are very important explaining the taxonomic and functional biodiversity of fishes. Just to let you know, as urbanization here in this work, we use the index from Gonzalez and colleagues in 2014. They estimate urbanization as an average of 6 urbanization variables, like proximity to urban center, building on the sand, beach cleaning, solid waste on the sand, vehicle traffic on the sand, and frequency of visitors. Yeah. So, okay, what was the relationship between those three: wave height, urbanization, and chlorophyll, the variables that explain most of the variation in fish assemblages? So from wave, we found that it was almost like basically a linear relationship. The bigger the wave, the lower the number of species and the lower the number of individuals of fishes. It was virtually linear. Like sand beaches with big waves, they have less fishes and less diversity of fishes. Chlorophyll was the opposite. Sites with higher chlorophyll, we found more fishes there, or a number of species of fish. And urbanization was not that clear, but we found a negative relationship. Like the higher the urbanization or the lower the urbanization, the higher was the species richness and abundance of fish. So if we can put in an overall context, we would say something like this. In preserved and low wave beach, you would have a lot of fishes from many species, and urbanized high wave beaches, we would have a few species and less individuals. That's the general pattern that we found for surf fishes. And what about the macrobenthos? So it was almost the same. But for macrobenthos, we found that the BI here stands for beach index. It's a measure of morphodynamics. So the morphodynamics was the main driver of sand beach macrobenthos. We did not find that a clear relationships when we applied the urban index to investigate variation in abundance, biomass of or species richness of macrobenthos. Yeah, so we found, okay, beach morphodynamics, it's a stronger influence, exerts a stronger influence than urbanization on beach macrobenthos. Just look at the BI, the beach index is calculated that way. So M set is the mean grain size, TR is tidal range, and S is slope. So, okay, and this is what's kind of expected, because one of the most important part in sand beach ecology is that the number of species, abundance, and biomass of organisms increase from reflective to dissipative beaches. So reflective beaches are those which have strong wave action, coarse sediments, while dissipative beaches, which stands here for the D, ultra dissipative beaches, UD, and TD, tidal flats, the wave action, the wave influence is much lower, and the sediment's fine. So the physical control is much more intense in reflective beaches than in the separated beaches. So this was kind of expected. Like most of the studies done so far on sandy beaches, they say that they have shown that number of species, biomass, and abundance of sandy beaches is highly dependent of the morphodynamic states of the beach. But besides assessing that overall influence of morphodynamics and urbanization, we also investigated the independent effect of each environmental and urbanization variable. And here, like, if you can see, like the size of the bar, the larger the size of the bar, the stronger its influence, right? So again, we found that morphodynamic variables, they do exert a very strong influence on the distribution, the spatial distribution of sand beach macrobenthos. However, we found that urbanization variables, when not including the urbanization index, they do exert a strong influence. For example, we can see that number of visitors and number of buildings on the sand, they exert a strong influence of species richness and biomass of sand beach macrobenthos. Yeah, just sorry. The variables in the gray area, they are the urbanization variables. And on the top, the white area, they are the environmental variables. So you can see here, for example, number of visitors was the main variable explaining the biomass variation and sand beaches, the biomass of macrobenthos. Yeah, even though the total explained variation was not that high, 13%. But yes, it was okay. Some urbanization variables, they do seem to be very important in explaining changes in sandy beach biodiversity. And this was the overall pattern. Like overall, also like wave height was very important. So the higher the wave height, the lower the number of species of sandy beach macrobenthos. And the microphytobenthos is like the chlorophyll on sediments, putting roughly like that. The higher the microphytobenthos content, which is a proxy for food, the amount of food disponible, the higher the number of individuals. And here on the bottom, the biomass, you can see the number of visitors, if increased, there's a sharp decrease in biomass of sandy beach macrofauna, and the same for the cleaning activities. And what about the across shore distribution? This was a very important study. Remember that I said that mostly studies, they did not investigate the submerged zones of sand beach macrofauna. And okay, we did that, we tried, even though it was not easy, we did that. And what we have found? We found that the submerged zone, the SZ here stands for the surf zone. It was the place, the zone in the across shore gradient that had the most number of species and the most biomass in the whole across shore continuous. In regards to the number of individuals, that was higher in the high intertidal zone, but because there are lots of small species and kind of opportunistic species, for example, Scololepis squamata, which is a tiny polychaete that grows and reproduces very fast and inhabits the high intertidal zone. But for species richness and biomass, it was kind of a steadily increase from the upper shore to the lower shore. So to finish this talk, to wrap up this talk and some take-home messages. I hope you believe me that sand beaches are not just pile of sand. They do sustain a large biodiversity, and that was very clear from our results. Like we found almost 9,000 fishes from 64 species, and more than 5,000 macrobenthos from 172 species. And the beach submerged zones, which is a largely overlooked habitat, especially in ecological investigations, they sustain the higher number of species in the cross gradient. Yeah, that was pretty clear in the last graphic that I showed you. But they also may be the most threatened by human activities, like in our study that we try to disentangle the effects of urbanization and environmental variables. The influence of environmental variables seem to be stronger in the submerged areas, even though those activities were mainly performed in the upper areas. For example, the number of buildings on the sun and number of visitors. And that's, okay, seems a bit logical because remember that I said that sand beaches are the core of the littoral active zones. That's the section of the coast characterized by the interchange of material. So through wind and waves, the wave action. So everything is connected there. So if something that's happening in the upper shore, it might affect the submerged zone as well. And sand beaches are like trapped in the coastal squeeze. Yeah, so they are at risk. And one concerning thing in regards to the preservation of sand beach ecosystems is that the current beach management practice, they are mainly focused on the maintenance of sand development protection of upper shore infrastructure. Like current management practice, they are missing important components, or even like, could even say that management practice now, the way they are done now, they are almost completely disregarding beach biodiversity. Look, for example, I just put on Google beach management and look at the pictures that show up. It's just about sand beach nourishment, like filling with sediment to overcome coastal erosion and building some seawalls and, oh, sorry, I don't know the name in English, but those rock things that, you know, to avoid the currents, to reduce currents and to protect coastal erosion, to reduce coastal erosion. And even like some of the best practice for beach preservation, that's, for example, the beach certification schemes, this is the blue flag, is the most recognized beach certification schemes in the world. It's not that it's bad, like it has something good. For example, say, oh, you need to take care of the waste, you need to try to do some environmental education to beach users, but they have 31 things that you need to follow to get this certificate. None of these 31 topics that you need to follow says anything about beach biodiversity. On the other hand, it is heavily focused on the services offered to the users of the beach zone. For example, toilets, shops on the upper shore, sidewalks. See, like every beach, this is Turkey, yeah? Do you have on which has the beach, the blue flag beach certificate? It's not well preserved. We have seen a number of beaches, number of buildings on the upper shore, they are like a main threat to beach biodiversity. And this would be okay. That's one of the best things you can go. So current beach management practices, they need to be updated. You know? Otherwise, this strategy will result in higher number of visitors and buildings, which will likely compromise the functioning of sand beaches. And also, as sand beaches is the link between terrestrial and marine environments, adjacent ecosystems as well. So monitoring and management initiatives should include both their social and ecological components of sand beaches, not only the social components that has been done so far, and also consider the whole littoral active zone as the proper management unit. I'm saying this now, but this is not new. Like since 2007, they have been there, like very good researchers from all over the world. Thomas Schlacker from Australia, Jennifer Dugan's California, David Schumann is Australia now, Mariano Lastra, Spain, Felicita Scapini, Italy, Mac Lackham is the sand beach guy who was the main researcher of sand beaches from the beginning, and Omar Defeu is now one of the best from Uruguay. All of them have been saying that, yeah, we are only caring about the social aspects. Like, the economic and social values of sand beaches are generally regarded as paramount, but sand shores also have special ecological features, and we need to care about them, right? So this is the reference that I used here. And please, I'm happy to take any questions if you want to ask. And this is my email. If you want to get in contact, I'll be happy to do so. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Caramel. You made it. I know that was hard. Your voice is probably very tired. I appreciate it. You did a good job. We did get one comment in, and it was related to the video that you were playing where you were getting knocked around in the surf. And one of the participants said, I'm doing a similar project in Northern California, and I completely empathize with the difficulty of sampling in this environment. So I thought that was fun. For folks that are online, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Or we're a small enough group that if you want, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you, but you can ask your questions that way. And while we give Guillermo a chance to breathe and maybe take a drink of water, for you all to put in your questions, I had a couple of questions. Just curious about this blue flag certification. That is not one that I know about. Is that something that's primarily in Brazil, or is that more spread out in other countries and other areas?
No, this is all over the world. This is the most recognized in Brazil. Actually, like I just found a research. They say in India, they just got some beaches with that certificate. In Brazil, we have a few, but this is not Brazilian. I don't recall now where it started, but it's been more like around for 20, 30 years and getting more and more importance, because it shows, okay, this is a very good beach for tourists because they do take care of the trash, like they measure the water quality. They provide toilets. That's also good infrastructure, but it's not the best thing, or even they do not consider the ecological components of some beaches.
Is that water quality sampling primarily for human health then?
Yeah. It's totally focused on human use of some beaches. That's not the same. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but we could also look at the biodiversity as well.
So I was aware of the kind of gap, and we call it the white zone, that surf zone area where there's just not a lot of sampling. I was not aware that it was as dramatic as what you presented. So you told a very good story. You very much led us to that place of like, okay, everybody, we need to get this together. But I was curious about your study and the new study in California that you were talking about. Do you think how is that going to lead to changes in policy and practices? Can you see the direct line of policy change from your work?
Yeah, I hope. Like one drawback, it's mainly because, okay, we do that a lot of research, but sometimes we do not talk to the policymakers and to the stakeholders. I think the talk between science and stakeholders, they can be improved so that they can really take into account what we have been finding. Yeah. But I do hope, like in Brazil, that we're saying that this project, we are using our results to promote the preservation of the north coast of Brazil. They are now stating the preservation plan of the north coast, I can put like that. And we are involved directly, like everyone from University of São Paulo, we are involved directly and providing inputs. So, okay, we need to take care of that. We need to not take care of that. What important thing, okay, number of visits and fishing, that's another issue because that's large vessels and small vessels. And many people care about the local fishermen that they do that and pass the sea net. But on the other hand, the large vessels just going very close to the shore and capturing everything. So yes, I do hope that we can talk better with the policymakers and they do take us into account. I don't know, from California, I know a guy that we have been in some conference together, Nick Scooter. He was one of the authors of that study. That's why I got to know, because it's not even published yet. It's a preprint. So that's why I got to know, and I hope they are using. I think they are doing a lot of good works in California here to preserve some beaches. So yeah, hopefully they use it.
We're getting a couple of questions, and for folks that are putting them in, keep them coming. We've got a few more minutes here, and I'm going to jump to just a question that came in. What is your suggestion on accomplishing the best ecological preservation for sandy beaches that are, is it that some are human used and some are natural focused, or is it like changing how much a particular beach is used? What are your thoughts about what is the best way for us to accomplish this goal?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And like I I'm not confident that I have the right answer, but for example, I said that McLachlan and the field, which are the two of the most experts and the most accomplished experts on beach ecology, they published a paper a few years ago that they say exactly like that. Okay, there are some beaches that are completely urbanized, so it's okay. They are urbanized. That's nothing much we can do about it. So, but there are other ones that are well preserved. So let's try to focus the preservation of those ones and reduce the impact on those ones so we can preserve the biodiversity there. While the other ones, which is more urbanized, we can say, okay, human can go to that one as well. But I know it's not that black and white, because from the studies that we have been doing, it depends also of the morphodynamics that I said, and the biodiversity of each one, it's complementary. The biodiversity, even though the more reflected beaches, the one with strong wave actions, they do have less species, but the species that inhabit there are different from the dissipative ones. So it's hard to say, okay, let's focus only on those type of beaches that have more species. So yeah, it's a good question, and it's a hard one to answer. What I would say is we should try to minimize, and we should try to preserve the whole, like littoral active zones. The some beaches preserve the dunes and try to not get that overcrowded beaches like that. For example, Copacabana would be anyway, it doesn't matter. It's more than 1 million people in one night. So yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and it's
I
hard
didn't
to
answer very much, but yeah.
it's hard to retro those as well. I know in Oregon we
Yeah.
have spatial planning around our estuaries, and they have some preserved areas and urban areas, but that happened before they were developed. So now it would be very hard to back out of an area,
Yeah,
like you were
exactly.
saying. Copacabana is what it is, and it's going to be hard to change.
Yeah, exactly. We need to like think further, and from here on, like try to take all of these findings into consideration.
We're running a little bit late, but I'm going to ask one more question because it came in a little earlier and I just want to get it out there. This individual was wondering about the impacts of dams and reservoirs on sand and sand beaches. Is that something that you have a background on at all? Or that you
Not
can speak
much,
to?
but no, not really, because dams and reservoirs, they are more for estuarine beaches. Yeah, I work with more exposed oceanic beaches, but they can compromise as well a lot, because they change the flux of sediments. Like the rivers are bringing sediments from the terrestrial ecosystems, and if you build a dam there, like it changes completely the input of fresh water and sediments. So for sure, it's gonna have a huge impact.
Yeah, I think, and that might be dependent on, yeah, like you were saying, where the beach is at and what are the local impacts to that particular beach. For sure. If that didn't answer your question, Bill, you might reach directly out to Guillermo and you can follow up with him. For everybody
Yes,
else
please.
online, yeah, I was just going to point back out that Guillermo's left up the contact up on the screen. So feel free to contact him if you have any follow-up questions or you would like to talk more, or somehow we can get him here. So we might try to get him to come to us at some point here in Oregon. And you can see why everybody is wearing coats on that particular picture on Cannon Beach, because it's cold here, even in the summer. So for everybody online, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Remember, there's no seminar next week. Will join us in 2 weeks after spring break. I don't know if you can see it, Guillermo, but you're getting a lot of thank you very much and congratulations and thumbs up for your presentation. And so we all are just really thankful that you took the time, even when you're not feeling well, to join us. So I appreciate that. Any last words for us, Guillermo?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you all for being here with me. And please, if you have any question, if you like to ask, or if you want me to send any work or anything, just send me an email. I will be happy to do it. And I would love to go to Oregon, visit Mauricio, and also know the beach there. I got very excited looking at the internet.
We'll make a plan. We'll figure out how to do it. All right, everybody online, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. And Guillermo, we'll see you sometime in the future here in Oregon. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we'll see you later. Thanks. Bye now.